I work for a major stationery brand, managing a pop-up store in a major city district. We are situated in the middle of a large shopping center, and like most pop-up stores, we have an open plan layout, which means people can walk through freely. The brand I work for are all about giving the best customer service and going above and beyond the usual retail requirements to help out our customers. Being new and eager to show my loyalty, I made sure to follow this code with all customer interactions, which can be difficult in retail, but nonetheless I stuck to it. Now, the first time I met Eugene, he was wearing a very old black three-piece suit, red tie, and a top hat with a feather. I'm not shitting you. I would put him at about the 75 to 85 age bracket. And on this day, he had gray hair and a walking stick to help him walk. This is important. Being in work mode, I greeted him with a, "You're looking very snappy today. Are you going to a special event?" Or something to that effect. Now, something to keep in mind is that the center is filled with noise, and this sometimes makes it hard to hear. I am sure everyone has done that thing of when you heard what another person has said, you just laugh or nod, rather than ask them to repeat. So when he replied quite softly, and I didn't hear what he had said, I just nodded and smiled. This was the first mistake, because as I determined from the conversations to follow, as well as other people's interactions, Eugene had actually asked me if I had been abused as a child. When I nodded, not hearing what he had said, he assumed that I was saying yes to his question, which opened up the opportunity for him to tell me all about his abusive childhood in great detail. Honestly, at the time I was too shocked and dedicated to staying in a professional character that I just let him go on, and eventually he left. Over the next couple of weeks, he would continually come and discuss this issue with me, probing me for my own details as well as asking me when my lunch break was so he could have tea with me. Yes, looking at it now, it was creepy, but I just thought he was old and lonely and wasn't too bothered to give him his 10 minutes of ranting. However, things got weird. He came in one day with completely bleach blonde hair and wearing what I can only describe as young modern clothing. He did have his walking stick, which he still seemed to be heavily dependent on. When he came up to me on this particular day, instead of diving straight into memory lane, this conversation occurred. "Eugene, do you have a boyfriend?" Me: "Hi Eugene, you're looking summery today, what can I help you with?" Eugene: "I said, do you have a boyfriend?" Me: "I am happily engaged, in fact, which is exciting. What about yourself?" Eugene: "Oh no, not me. I am not interested in girls who haven't had the same life experience as me." Me: "Well, I am sure you will find someone, Eugene." At this point, he starts to get uncomfortably close to me. Me: "Was there anything I could help you with?" Eugene: "I have found you. Be with me. Can you marry me?" Me: "Oh well, that's a lovely gesture, but I am, as I said, engaged. Thank you, though." I started to move away and pretended to clean, however he followed me. At this stage, the center was quiet with hardly any customers, and I'm desperately trying to find a way out of the conversation without being rude or upsetting him. Eugene: "If you weren't with him, would you be with me?" Me: "I would actually like to travel, Eugene, so probably not." Eugene, shouting: "I want to travel. When do you finish work? We can head off after that." At this point, I was in fight or flight mode and mumbled something about working late. Thankfully, a passing customer came by to ask me about a product, and I moved away to serve them. Eugene left. When I was alone again, I called security and told them what had happened. I also let them know that I felt extremely uncomfortable. They said that the next time I saw him, I was to call them. I also informed the other staff working in the center about what happened. Security walked me to my car that evening, and I got home safely. 2 weeks passed and no sign of Eugene, which was a relief, and I assumed he had given up. It was a pretty quiet day on this one particular day, so I decided to do some serious cleaning of our shelves. I was cleaning for about 15 minutes on my knees before I had to grab some more paper towels. I stood up and turned, and directly behind me is Eugene. He was so close that I could feel his breath. And even as I write this, I can feel the same cold shock sweep through my body that I felt on that day. I was fucking terrified. How long had he been behind me watching? Today he was wearing all black, joggers, t-shirt, and even his runners were black. He had absolutely no walking stick in sight and was just staring at me blankly. I had pretty much lost all professionalism at this point and said to him that I would help him after I made a quick phone call. Thankfully, he didn't follow me to my station, and as soon as I put the phone to my ear, he strode. Yes, he fucking strode off. Security answered and were actually right by where he was and escorted him out of the center. At this point, I was just so terrified and shocked that I went and stood by in a neighboring shop. When security came back, he asked me how long I had known him for. I told him I only knew him as a customer and nothing else. The security guard then said to me the whole time he kept saying, "She's mine, she's making a mistake. She is going to be with me. She takes the bus." Somehow he knew what fucking bus I took. At that point, I just burst into tears and called my fiancée to come get me and called a girl from another store to take over. Since then, he has only come into the center a couple of times. Each time, security would come and inform me and hang around my store until he left. I still find him creepy, and I'm terrified every time I know he's there. When I was 22, I moved 1,000 miles away from my Midwest home to the beautiful foothills of Tennessee. I had a new job, new car, and a nice apartment, but didn't know a soul outside of work. If my phone rang, I expected to hear a faraway family member or my long-distance boyfriend, still in college. This was a landline, no cell phones yet. Despite being very alone, I was managing well with the excitement of all the new things in my life. I had only lived there about 2 weeks when the unwanted calls started. The first call, a man's friendly voice asked what I was doing. I couldn't place him and thought maybe it was one of my cousins or uncles. I have a huge extended family. I asked his name. He laughed a little and his tone got dark, a bit angry. He said, "You know exactly who this is, darlin'." I paused, trying to decide if this guy simply called the wrong number or was a creep. I chose the former, laughed, and politely told him he had the wrong number. He then recited my brand new, unlisted, unpublished phone number and my name. What the fuck? An intense chill raced through me. I'd only given my new number to my parents, sister, boyfriend, apartment manager, and employer. I was new to this city and this lovely southern state. He did not like it when I told him he had called the wrong number and started yelling at me. Then he told me in a much calmer voice the many vulgar things he's going to do to me. I hung up and brushed it off. He called again around 1 a.m. I told him to go fuck himself and I hung up. He kept calling, so I unplugged the phone and went back to sleep. However, as days went by, the calls continued and escalated. He started mentioning personal things about me, said he liked the white quilt on my bed, knew what was in my fridge, that he's allergic to cats, I had one, and then asked me if I was in love with Mari. As I listened to his words, I was standing in my kitchen looking at the calendar taped to the fridge. It had Mari written in pink on the 17th with a heart around it, because Mari is my sister, and the 17th is her birthday. I started shaking and crying because suddenly I realized this creep had been in my apartment. I was alone, with no friends or family to run to for the night. It was me versus a creepy mystery man. I didn't sleep much that night. Early the next morning, I talked to the apartment complex manager before heading to work, telling her what had happened and that I wanted the locks changed that day. She had a weird look on her face and after a long pause says she knew who had been in my apartment and that it won't happen again. What? Turns out she had a creepy maintenance guy who noticed a young woman moving into an apartment alone and thought I was his new pet. She had the locks changed immediately and promised that she would personally keep the other key. Although the calls stopped, for a year, I was paranoid as I came and went from my apartment, because I never even knew what this guy looked like. I moved out the moment my lease was up. Only after thinking about it years later did I realize that her weird expression likely meant that it had happened before. Plus, she didn't even fire him. At the time I was young and naive, but I will always regret not calling the cops. For reference, I am a 20-year-old Hooters girl and encounter creepy guys all the time, but never like this. I occasionally get asked for my number and to go on dates by older men, but I always politely turn them down without really upsetting anyone. Anyone who says anything perverted or uncomfortable will get kicked out immediately, so that rarely happens. I was working the night shift the other night and had a 40-something-year-old man sit at my table by himself. I greeted him the same way I greet all customers. Lots of smiling, laugh at their jokes, ask about their day, etc. He was really irritated and didn't seem to want to talk to me at all, so I assumed he was there to eat and leave without all the chatting, which customers would normally expect from the waitresses. I offered a box and dessert at the end of his meal, but he just paid and got up to leave. When I brought his change back, he grabbed my arm and pulled me close and said, "I want you so badly," before letting go and walking out the door. I was so uncomfortable that I just stood there until he left. This was around 8 p.m. I told the other girls what had happened, but soon forgot about it and carried on with serving other tables. We close at midnight on weekdays, so by the time I was ready to go, it was about 1:30 a.m. I carry a stun gun in my bag and normally have someone walk me to my car. But it was so late that nearly everyone had already left, and those that were still there were busy trying to clean up so they could leave. I had parked right in front of the doors, leaving my car only 5 feet away, so I decided to quickly get in my car without being walked. I always lock my doors out of habit and went to check my phone, which was dead. I have one of those crappy chargers in my car that only charge at a certain angle, and was busy trying to get my phone to charge when a truck pulled up behind me, blocking me in. I couldn't pull forward because the restaurant was in front of me, and I couldn't back up because of this truck. At first I thought it was my roommate, who will sometimes come check on me if I get home too late to make sure I'm okay. It was a silver truck, which is what my roommate drives. But when I turned to look at it, it was a different model, which made my heart sink. This person then proceeded to honk their horn at me over and over for a good 5 minutes, trying to get me out of my car. When I refused because Mama didn't raise an idiot, he pulled up next to me, got out, and started knocking on my window. He yelled at me to get out of my car. I sat there in shock. It was the same guy that was at my table 5 hours earlier. My phone wouldn't turn on, so I switched into reverse, and as fast as I could, I reversed out of the parking lot. I saw him jump back in his truck and to follow me, so I ran a red light and started speeding. He stopped at the light, and I drove for a bit before going home in case he caught up and tried following me to my house. I checked my car when I got home, thinking maybe I was being paranoid. He could have accidentally hit my car and was wanting to let me know, but I didn't see any marks. I don't know whether he was trying to rob me or kidnap me, but creepy man who waited 5 hours in the parking lot for me, I really hope we never meet again.